In today's world, we want to collect more data and we want it faster, no matter where we are. In many locations, it is difficult to get direct access to a network to upload data to the cloud for IoT applications. But cellular LTE advancements are quickly removing this barrier. With different technologies embraced by different geographical locations, it is important to understand the needs of your own project, as well as the products and development kits available to bring your IoT applications to life. Welcome to today's Tech Chat, sponsored by Mouser Electronics, where we chat with engineering experts about the latest technical innovations that are shaping and reshaping our world. Today, we are excited to chat with Jay Johnson, Senior Business Development Manager in the MCU development team at Renesas Electronics, to discuss some key products and systems that allow us to take advantage of remote connection technologies for smarter IoT devices. Welcome to the Tech Chat, Jay.
Thank you. Glad to be here. All right, let's go ahead and get started then. We're excited to offer a new lineup at Renesas. Of course, we're most well known for our MCUs, which was the original origin of Renesas technology, which was a spinoff from Hitachi and a Mitsubishi merger. But now we are acquiring a lot of different companies, and specifically, I'll talk today about the Sequans partnership we have for the LTE product, which gives you cellular connectivity for any IoT application and eliminates the gateway. So working very closely with Sequans, which is a French company, and they've been in business for quite a while, developing their own RF and baseband. And so we have a strategic partnership that I'll talk about a little bit during this presentation. So first of all, let's talk about the basics, right? This is non-cell phone, non-smartphone technology. So the IoT basics are, it's a low power, a wide area network technology based on, of course, the mobile communication market. And, cell phone towers are everywhere. So the telecoms are always looking for a way to increase their revenue stream. And the IoT market is really making that possible. With traditional 4G and 5G standards, it makes it very easy for a customer to integrate an LTE, Cat-M1, or an NB-IoT implementation, which this chart represents. We have two products, actually, that address both of those markets, which are very complementary. They're narrow band for low power, wide area IoT use cases. So Cat-M1 is probably the most prevalent in the North American market. NB-IoT is coming on very strong, and it typically is a little bit less data rate, and I think I have a chart on that coming up as well, but we do support both the standards of NB-IoT and Cat-M1.
Now, when you're looking at the comparison of these two products, I see that there's a few call outs of some specific application cases, but with the low throughput and delay tolerant, that sounds like an ideal situation for some of those data collection devices like in industrial applications where it may not need instant response and instant data processing, but rather to trend data over long periods of time.
Yes, that's correct. In fact, many of the applications only need to check in a receive or transmit mode, once a day, once an hour, very limited. So it's not always on, which gives you the ideal situation of low power and low data rate transmission. So the major difference, and again, NB-IoT is kind of a stationary thing, right? So more for parking meters, industrial, the city infrastructures. We're seeing a lot of activity in utility meters, where they just wake up maybe even once a day and give a reading, right? So it's not always on. It's not always transmitting, not always receiving. So absolutely, good question. And if we want to talk about what I like to call the ins and outs, or the gazindas and gazadas, as we used to say, the LTE, we'll start in the middle here with the Cat-M1 standard, because that's what we support today. You have download speeds up to 1 megabit per second. Same for upload speeds. The bandwidth is very narrow, 1.4 megahertz, not quite as narrow as the NB, which is 20 kilohertz. But single transmit antennas, full and duplex, full half duplex and full duplex is supported on the Cat-1 standard. which we'll have a product coming out in the future on. But today, it's enough bandwidth, it's enough peak data rate and bandwidth to support those IoT applications that only need to wake up once in a while. So Cat 1, that's going to offer, of course, the 10 megabit per second download and 5 megabit per second upload speeds at a much higher bandwidth rate as well. So then you'd be able to support security systems with video and that type of thing. So that's where we're at today. The Cat M1 and the NB-IoT with a future product coming in Cat 1.
Now, just a minute ago, when we were talking about some of the application cases, you mentioned power. So the things that have to check in on a much less frequent basis can conserve more power. So as I'm looking at this chart, I would kind of imagine that the Cat 1 with much higher data rate and also more transmit power, I guess that to me kind of equals that it's going to be more of a power consuming kind of device. So it's not just about data rates necessarily, but it's also about, is the application going to need to run on a battery for a really long period of time? Those sorts of other design questions.
Exactly. And that's a very key consideration for the design engineer, whether it's a, power, mains powered or if it's battery powered. So some of the obviously utility companies and security companies, typically it's going to be mains powered. So it's not going to be battery powered, but many of the IoT applications that we're seeing today, and Sequans has actually the lowest power in our of any of the RF LTE suppliers right now. So the technology was optimized for low power. So that's one of the things that we do best is the power consumption. So just a little bit of primer too here on the rollout of the cellular IoT networks. Again, everybody's getting excited about it now. The Verizons and AT&Ts and T-Mobiles of the world certainly are on board. In the North American and most of the South American continents, we do see both LTE and NB-IoT. There are some regions which are LTE only. And then, of course, when you get over to Europe and Asia, there's a lot of NB-IoT only. So that's an interesting statistic as this rolls out. So this map indicates the standards that are rolled out by the telcos in these particular regions and continents and countries.
And now, obviously, a map like this isn't something that you as a designer have any control over. But is that something that that is subject to evolving over the years, that where more countries are going to be adopting both standards, or is this kind of a regulated place where these are going to be the limitations going into the future?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, because we deal with a lot of companies here in the U.S. that are making products for the East, Far East, and Asia, not necessarily just for Europe or for North America, South America. So you have to be cognizant of what standards the telcos have rolled out in those particular regions. So again, NB-IoT only is kind of prevalent in the Far East, but both LTE-M and NB-IoT are coming on very strong in North America and South America and Australia. So, and then there's in between in the ocean where you have the container stuff, which we're talking about a little bit at the end of this presentation. So we'll talk about that as well.
That's an interesting aspect of asset tracking is, you can look at a map like this and you see the land, but what you don't see is the water and the air. Very interesting how the regulations and limitations change.
It is, most definitely. So next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our particular cellular LTE module roadmap. Again, these are not chipped down versions of the LTE technology, but rather a module. And the advantage of a module, of course, is it's pre-certified by the carriers, and you don't have to do any more certification with the carriers except for your end product. Of course, you have to do the radio law stuff and all that in the end product, but the module itself is pre-certified, and that's a huge advantage for time to market and just cost, really. But the first product that we announced last year is called the RYZ14A014A, and that's a Cat M1 only module. So again, it's all pre-certified single worldwide SKU, very easy to implement. And, once you do your board down design and pick your antenna for whatever you're looking at as far as the antenna considerations, which are very important as well. And we work with many of the antenna suppliers to maximize the transmit and receive of the within a cellular network, or depending on where you are. The next product in the roadmap, as I mentioned, will offer NB-IoT, so it'll be a little bit smaller package, lower power, and that's the 24A, and that product is coming out later this year in Q4 timeframe, as well as an NB-IoT firmware upgrade. So you'll be able to upgrade that module to the NB-IoT standard. And then moving forward, we're going to have other variants of modules, which will offer some of our MCUs embedded in them, which is pretty exciting. So we're really adding a lot more value than just the LTE module itself, the cellular connectivity module. And then, of course, future products, which would include, like 5G. These are all 4G products to start with. And then later on in the future, we'll have a 5G offering once that market matures a little bit more.
So looking at this product lineup, I guess at the risk of being a little bit redundant with the last slide where it was looking at a geographical map, the current, the RYZ014A, since that one's the M1 only, then that one would have to be only used in those regions which are either M1 or both. So a designer and end user would have to be cognizant of where they're geographically located, whereas the RYZ024, if it has both functionality, has a little bit more diversity in geographical application.
Exactly. Most definitely. That is the case. Okay, moving on to the next slide. This is a busy slide, but it really tells you everything you need to know about the 14A, which is the current product we have in the market, Cat M1. Again, the advantage of using a carrier certified module for worldwide use is huge for a design engineer. It comes in a 20 by 21 LGA package. It has a micro SIM interface because you'll need a SIM card, of course. And then for our MCU, companion MCU designs, of course, it works off AT commands. So basically, you don't have to program the module. It comes pre-programmed with all the firmware you need for the cellular connection to the carriers, and that, depending on what carrier you choose in the SIM card. But basically, it comes with a field-proven LTE software stack, and then is programmable through the AT commands of the MCU that we sell alongside of this. So the benefits, and I'll touch on these briefly. As I mentioned before, using a module reduces your development cost and effort compared to a chipset. It'll support all the worldwide frequency bands. Basically, an ultra-low power power consumption is one of the tenets of this product, down to 1 microamp. So it's a very low power in a standby mode. And then, of course, the pre-certified regulations, the customers and the designers don't need to certify the module, only the end product, and that saves a lot of time and money. And where we're seeing this rolled out in many of the applications, as I mentioned, is metering, a lot for electricity, gas, water, some of the smart home and infrastructure that's going on in EV charging. Industrial IoT is a big one. Asset and container tracking, that's a huge market, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, as one of the key use cases that we have. And then, again, don't forget, this can replace your gateway. You go straight to the cloud, right? With this, you don't need a Wi-Fi or BLE connection to a gateway, which takes you to the internet or the cloud. This is the gateway product, and so we're seeing a lot of applications are like, hey, I can go straight to the cloud with this. So it's very cool. Chip to cloud is kind of the idea there. We'll talk about that with one of the products that we have, one of the board level evaluation kits that we have called the Cloud Kit. So, there's little package drawing at the bottom with the size, and then the PMOD, which is a peripheral module, serial interface, which plugs into many of our EKs, as well as, is the Digilent PMOD standard.
I'm curious about one of those benefits there, the one about the power consumption. Obviously, 1 microamp, very low power consumption, and this is the board that supports a higher data rate. But for future evolutions of boards that can work with either standard, the benefit of working with one with a lower frequency of connection can allow it to be in a sleep mode more, so you have a much lower average current. Is a board that supports both, does it have a selectable or a changeable current consumption since it's able to work with either standard?
Yes, in fact, it is highly programmable for, it depends on when you want to wake it up to do any kind of transmit or receive. So yeah, that's all programmable through the AT command interface that we provide. And then you can determine that wake up time with the microcontroller that is a companion to this chip, or to this module, I should say. So yes, it's very key, and you can program it however you want it to wake up. If you want to wake up every 5 minutes, or you want to wake up every 2 hours, or every once a day, it can be programmed, and that's where you get the standby current of very, very low microamp kind of standby currents.
And I imagine it's really important because you mentioned being able to supply mains power in some cases, but I think one of the main attractions of cellular technology is the fact that it can be used in remote areas where mains power may not necessarily be available with a network and power nearby. So I think the battery consumption is going to be a big need for many users.
It is, and we're seeing solar applications and all kinds of cool energy harvesting type applications where very low microamp power consumption is necessary. So it's very key. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about our software. We have the flexible software package, which is a Renesas only kind of thing. It is an open standard, I should say, so it's not, but it can only be used on our microcontrollers. Basically, what we do is provide all the middleware for whatever stack you need to run the microcontroller and interface to TLS, MQTT. We have capacitive touch, of course, the Wi-Fi cellular connectivity that we just are talking about today, security, everything is ready to go. So this is a package that you can download off GitHub, and it helps you get started right away to use. It's flexible for legacy code, any kind of open software ecosystem partner that you want. I handle some of the ecosystem partners that do like graphics and security, extra security software, those type of things. The other cool thing about it is you can use either the free RTOS from Amazon or the Azure RTOS from Microsoft. Now it used to be ThreadX. Microsoft bought ThreadX, so it's very cool. Or you can use your own. RTOS has a very flexible interface with a SIMSYS interface. So very cool. We interface or we support all of the microcontrollers with the flexible software package. So moving on, I talked a little bit about the PMOD standard. This is something that we've adopted over the last 5 or 6 years now. All of our development kits, evaluation kits have PMOD connectors, typically the 6A standard, which is the Digilant spec. And for this particular module, the RYZ014A, we have a kit that ships out. We can either supply these on their own to plug into any evaluation kit that Renesas has from a microcontroller standpoint. And I'll talk about it in a minute, a cloud kit, which is actually bundled with the cloud kit. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can obviously do this or get this link to the PMOD page that we have dedicated. And it tells you all the specifications that you need and how to order. So available through distribution. The next slide really talks a little bit more about that. It's not just about connectivity hardware that we talked about for PMODs, but also sensor hardware. Many of the IoT systems today, they want to monitor temperature, humidity, gas, any kind of biometric, flow meters. Some of the acquisitions we've had over the years provides that technology from IDT and Intercell and some of the other companies that Renesas has acquired. And then, of course, your processing power, can come from a very low cost, low power RL78 16-bit microcontroller all the way up through the RX, RA, and RZ product lines, which are very well supported by this Quick Connect IoT standard that we're enabling for quick prototyping of IoT systems.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it says sensor hardware over there. It looks like as kind of the form factor of a PMOD type module. But are there any sensors that are included, kind of integrated right into the board for these IoT kits?
Oh, great question. Yes. In fact, I'll talk about the cloud kit in a moment where it has all the sensors on the board, no connectivity other than Ethernet. But we'll talk about that on the next couple slides.
Awesome.
Okay. So end-to-end cloud solutions. Yeah, this is what it's all about, right? The 14A, our CAT-M1 module coupled with sensors and an MCU gives you that cellular all-in-one connection. And we do have a kit that's actually in the market right now based on an RX65N or an RA6M5, which is our ARM-based product. The RX family, by the way, is an internal custom core that does basically what an ARM does, but it's something that Renesas announced 10 or 11 years ago now, and has been adopted in the market as another 32-bit standard that Renesas supports. So it also includes Ethernet. But let's talk about it in detail. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide because this is pretty exciting and addresses the question that you just had. The Cloud Kit RA6M5, there's actually an RX version of this as well if you want to go with the internal custom core. But it's a flexible design. It does have PMOD connectors on it. It has Arduino as well, but it has two PMOD connections, which is nice. It's a very portable design. You can actually run it off a battery. It has the connectivity with PHYs, and of course ships with the CAT-M1 module PMOD, which is the RYZ014A. So it has an onboard debugger. It has the sensors. Let's talk about the sensors because this is exciting. Everything is on the board. So you get temperature, humidity, you get the indoor and outdoor air quality sensors, which are very, very cool in the market. We see a lot of neat applications for sensing the quality of air and monitoring that. And then you can add AI to that to react to a specific event that may be happening with the air quality. It does have an SpO2 oxygen pulse ox sensor as well. It has barometric pressure as well, and a MEMS motion tracking sensor, which is very key for some of the asset tracking applications that we see where you may want to monitor, is the package moving, has it been dropped, what location is it at, of course, or what the is it stationary versus moving. So we have software that can help you identify that actually from an AI companies that we work with as well. And of course it has two MEMS microphones, so you can do sound-based applications as well, and voice recognition or voice user interface. So it really has just about every sensor you can imagine on it.
Now, talking about the asset tracking application, I think this may be covered in another slide later on when we talk about this, but using those PMOD connectors, are there any capabilities like a GPS module that can allow you, I could imagine that being extremely useful for tracking vehicles, maritime, and aerospace applications, things like that?
Absolutely. We don't actually have at Renesas a GPS chipset, but there are PMODs and Arduino connectors and other ways that you can plug in a GPS chipset. I will plant this seed that we are working on a software-only implementation for GPS and GNSS, which will run on the actual LTE modules. So that's something that's coming in the future as well.
Now, also, anytime I see a board that has the headers in the shape of an Arduino there, that obviously appeals to people who've kind of grown up with that development environment, a little bit more the hobby DIY kind of thing. So when somebody has an application that's already built that uses, say, a custom shield for an Arduino application, is the program that they've designed in that, using that integrated development environment, how easy is that to be able to port into the software environment for these controllers?
Yeah, it's actually very easy. I mean, if it's written in C, we can easily help, you port that to this particular platform and recognize the sensors, and do whatever you want to do with the data, either collecting the data and then running an AI or machine learning application. This chip Actually, the RA6M5 is a M33 core running at 200 megahertz, so it's very capable of doing endpoint intelligence, is what we like to say, and that can be run right on the chip, right on this board. So absolutely, can be ported to that.
And I appreciate it whenever companies do include things like the headers for those more cost effective things that a lot of people have grown up with. It makes it a lot friendlier and easier often to get into a task which otherwise might be a little too difficult or intimidating.
Absolutely, it's just like Legos, like building blocks. Very easy to add on whatever you want to do and create your differentiation and not have to worry about creating your own or breadboarding your own board. And so it's very nice. Moving along now, the actual package that we ship out with the CK RA6M5 or the CK RX65N comes with the RYZ14A PMOD, an antenna, the SIM card, so you can get on right away and onboard this to whatever carrier you'd like to use. And then a quick start guide and all the documentation, of course, that comes in the kit. And you can refer to renesas.com for more detailed. And we actually have application projects as well that will allow you to get started very quickly with a project. You can activate your SIM card through one of our ecosystem partners called Micro AI. And then we also have choose your own onboarding through the ibasis.com. And those are listed on iBasis, or their website, I should say. But basically, when you buy this, you get 30 days free of data usage from the day of activation. So I think it's up to 50 megabytes of data for 30 days, whichever comes first. So,
which that's quite an impressive amount of data for a lot of the applications that these are going to be sending.
It is, and it's actually a lot of customers don't even use that because, again, they're waking this product. Most of the applications are only waking up at a certain time to send or receive data. So 50 megabytes is a lot of data.
It really is.
So that is pretty much it. I did want to cover one particular use case of a market that's growing very dramatically and has a lot of investment in it. And that's the asset tracking market, which is valued at almost $18 billion last year and expected to grow almost 14% over the next 5 years or so. So we're very much on top of this. If you look at what IDC is saying, this transportation industry has now become the second largest investment in the, everybody was wondering, where are these billions of units in IoT going to come from, right? That we talked about for the last 10 years or 15 years. Well, look at the investment they're spending to develop these type of asset tracking devices, and the spend on that is in the 70 to 80 billion dollar range. So it's crazy good, and we're really excited to be able to support the asset tracking market, whether it's a package or a carrier. We're seeing a lot of applications now in shipping containers, right? Because this is the way things get moved around the world, right? Are the shipping containers. So if you look at some of the challenges that we dealt with and some of the designs that we've done so far, as we mentioned before, and you pointed out very clearly, different regions have different standards, right? NB-IoT versus Cat-M1. So it has to have the capability of being on both networks and both carrier certifications. And then you mentioned GPS, right? Definitely upgradable. We're working on a plan right now to be able to offer a firmware upgrade to do location-based services, not navigation, because it uses the same chipset or the same baseband controller as the LTE. But for a real-time location, when maybe a shipping container is out to sea, it receives the satellite information for location and then stores it, and then you be able to track it once you get to a cellular network or upload it to a cellular network. Low power we've already covered. Supply, that's always the hot topic when you visit a customer these days. Well, can I get parts, with all the chip shortages we've had over the last couple of years? Absolutely. This supply, because this market is so big, We can supply up to 50,000 a month. That was one of the customers we dealt with. And so supply is not an issue from Renesas. And of course, we support the MCU. In this case, it was an RA2, which is one of the lower end microcontrollers, and the software we talked about with flexible software package. So again, it got into market very quickly with the pre-certified module at a competitive price.
Now, just out of curiosity, I see over there it says transportation industry is the second largest segment investing in IoT. Do you know what the first largest segment is?
I believe it's just the industrial. It's kind of a wide, a wide swath that they cast.
Yeah. Sometimes labeling industries is a little difficult anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when they mention industrial IoT is probably the largest. So that's it covers everything else, metering and everything else. So I think transportation, things that move around, is the second largest to industrial.
And kind of in a sort of a parallel use to asset tracking, obviously there's a lot of mobility issues in tracking objects, but I can think of off the top of my head lots of other applications, including probably a lot of agriculture applications for something like this, monitoring crop health and people doing beekeeping, farming in more remote areas. This definitely with the support both of the products and the software from Renesas, but also having the ability to build along with other applications, including custom hardware and sensors, and those sensors that are already included on the board. That really creates a pretty capable system right out of the box to be able to do all kinds of different monitoring and collecting of data and processing for all sorts of applications.
Exactly. In fact, agriculture is a very big market for this. In monitoring the health of the crop as well as soil. Does it need to be watered? Does it need to be weeded? Is there, is there infestation? So we are seeing a lot of irrigation as well as just overall agricultural applications where you're close enough. I mean, the coverage of the cell towers is pretty good, even out in, Kansas, where I went to school. There's lots of space in between the cell towers, but certainly, you can definitely get, an IoT, agriculture IoT application straight to the cloud to monitor all kinds of different things in the agricultural world, as well as irrigation. We're talking, I think there's one customer we talked to that does just golf course irrigation systems, right? And they implemented an NB-IoT only Cat M1, but NB-IoT specifically, because that's the difference is, with an NB-IoT application, it typically doesn't move, right? It's not moving around doing a cell phone a tower handoff between towers. So NB-IoT is very cost effective for those type of agricultural applications. So let me talk just a little bit about, I think we also mentioned in this use case scenario, we provided the eval kit with a PMOD, so it made it very easy for the customer to get the hardware right away and begin their code development, their developments of the code that they needed to write for the application. And of course, the systems run on not just cellular, of course, right? We have a lot of other products like BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy for mesh applications, and a lot of the containers today, they have a very cloud-based mesh system that allows you to, see all of the containers via BLE, via the low power Bluetooth low energy. And then we have battery charging and DC to DC converters and all kinds of, analog and power products that can also go into these systems. So really what I'm saying is we offered the customer in this case, or this use case for asset tracking, a total hardware and software system level solution, making it very easy for them to get to market and finish their product.
Well, this has certainly made me want to look around my own place and see what kind of applications I have for a remote data logging, data collecting application.
Absolutely, and don't forget we recently bought a machine learning, artificial intelligence based company called Reality AI, and they can actually put this once the data collection is done, put the endpoint inference technology, all the algorithms that recognize, is this out of line in a spec, for predictive maintenance of motors and sound, detecting sound, and all kinds of really cool applications. So I think this will enable not only the chip to cloud connectivity, but also a lot of artificial intelligence applications on this hardware platform that we're talking about today.
All right. Well, this is really good. Is there any now that we've kind of reached the end, are there any other points that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, the only thing I would also mention is that, because Renesas is a global company now, with a lot of acquisitions, we've invested in, wireless connectivity technology, sensor technology, now cellular technology. So it's just really coming together. We used to be just an MCU. These call us just the Japanese MCU company, but now it's a lot more than that with our connectivity strategy.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So before we sign off, I want to encourage everyone to check out all of the latest Renesas products at Mauser Electronics, who is our sponsor for today's Tech Chat. And once again, special thanks to Jay Johnson for his insight and experience with MCU development. And please join us again next time for our Tech Chats, where we chat with leading technical experts just like Jay, who are changing our world every day.